Cyclone MMA. Man, oh man, Ariel Helwani is just starting beef with everyone. He had the whole Paddy Pimblett thing recently where Paddy talked shit about him on his podcast with Dana White. Dana White chipped in and they spent a long time just roasting Ariel Helwani. And Ariel Helwani clapped back. He did like an hour of just material on Paddy and Dana, and the nose has been coming to play. He's not backing down. He keeps saying he keeps receipts and he tosses it back. And this most recent one was with Dillon Danis. Now, I didn't even know these guys were beefing. I thought Dillon Danis and Ariel Helwani were cool, but apparently Ariel Helwani tweeted something about Jake Paul and Drake back in the day. Back in the day, it probably means like a year ago. Dillon Danis told Ariel Helwani to stop being a bitch. Then the two went back and forth, exchanging on Twitter. I think it had something to do with, Dillon Danis only fighting twice, but calling himself a fighter. Regardless, these two, they were a little chippy. They did an hour, and I recommend you go ahead and watch that hour now. It's the most recent episode of the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani. And it was actually really entertaining. I didn't expect to watch as much of it as I did, but I kind of got hooked because Dillon Danis comes in and Ariel Helwani reaches out his hand, ready to shake his hand, and Dillon Danis denies it. And Dillon Danis, for those of you who don't know, and you guys know, he is kind of the black sheep of the MMA community. He is not well liked or well received whatsoever. And I'm not going to lie to you, after watching this, I like him just a little bit better. I still think he's memeable because he talks a big game, yet he only has 2 fights in Bellator. And anytime anyone does anything, he's very much like Conor McGregor, where he has to put in his own, narrative. So if Paddy Pimblett fights, he's like, oh, I will destroy Paddy Pimblett like this, and I will give you $1,000 if I lose, or whatever. Francis Ngannou could be fighting, and then Dillon Danis would just say, oh, I beat that guy with one hand behind my back. It's just like he's playing the social media game, and he's doing it well, and I'm sure he's making a lot of money based on this because he's not making money as a fighter. But this interview specifically was fun. Dillon Danis talked about his, upcoming fight with KSI, and it's either going to be an exhibition or pro boxing match. KSI is a YouTuber. Dillon Danis, a BJJ guy. So I don't even know what to think of that. Dillon Danis talks about getting attacked multiple times. This dude's been in some scraps, and he never seems to be the one starting the fights. I mean, he starts it with his mouth because he never shuts up, but he always is getting attacked. I forget the boxer that punched him recently, but he hit him real good. Actually wobbled Dillon Danis. He had a fight there. He's had, run-ins with Jake Paul, run-ins with different fighters. I mean, if you remember, let's see what UFC it was. UFC 229, Khabib versus Conor. Khabib jumped over the cage at Dillon Danis. It was Dillon Danis running his mouth that set off Khabib. So the dude seems to have more fights outside of the octagon than he does. I shouldn't say the octagon because it's Bellator, but he has more fights outside of the ring than in the ring. Kind of crazy. But this was a really fun interview. They were giving barbs back and forth. Ariel Helwani at one point called Dillon Danis a bitch. Dillon Danis said, watch your mouth. Which is like the balls on Ariel Helwani to have a fighter in his studio and call him a bitch. It was interesting. But I did see a different perspective. I feel like I have a different perspective now on Dillon Danis as a person. I see him more of a Colby Covington type figure. Like, it very much is a gimmick. He very much says everything just to get his name out there. And I don't think he's actually a terrible person. This is something Helwani talked about too, where it's like deep down there's a good guy in there, and he just talks so much shit and definitely either hangs out with the wrong people or just has a money first perspective to life where he's just going to say whatever the hell to get the clicks and to get people to care about him. But yeah, interesting stuff. Eventually, they did shake hands, and they seemed cool. They seemed fine. But an interesting interview. I figured I'd talk about it. I don't want to say 10-8 Helwani or 10-8 Danis. It was very much a back-and-forth affair. It was a nice brawl. It was just them talking to each other. And they're having this whole therapy session, and it's like, you said this, no, you said this, and you said this, you're sensitive, well, you're a dick. And then they just kept jabbing each other back and forth too. Helwani saying, oh, I don't know the names of the guys that you fought. And then Danis saying, oh, you're just a nerd with action figures. And it was very much like the Jason Mayhem Miller interview with Ariel Helwani, but watered down. Dillon Danis, I think, is a character, kind of like how Mayhem was Lucky Patrick or whatever the hell that guy's character's name was. But interesting stuff. Ariel Helwani, Dillon Danis. I say next, Helwani should have Patty on and see how that goes. I think that would be a little bit of a spicier interview. But yeah, basically this is my recommendation to go watch that interview. Good shit, funny stuff in the MMA world. And if Dillon Danis gets beat by a goddamn YouTuber, all cred gone. Just completely gone. So, yeah. Goodbye.